The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, taped to the apartment door like a tombstone marking the death of what little stability Claire Morrison had managed to scrape together. 72 hours to vacate. 3 days to figure out where a 34-year-old woman and her 7-year-old daughter would sleep after Friday. Claire stood in the hallway of the rundown complex in Newark, New Jersey, staring at the paper until the words blurred. Behind her, Maya's small voice cut through the fog of panic. "Mom, is that about the rent?" Claire turned to find her daughter in the doorway, backpack already on for school, dark eyes too knowing for 7 years old. Maya had learned to read tension in her mother's shoulders, to interpret silence as bad news, to ask questions that adults shouldn't have to answer, but children in poverty always had to. "Yeah, baby, it's about the rent. How long do we have?" 3 days. Maya's face didn't crumple. She'd learned not to waste energy on tears when problems required solutions. Instead, she adjusted her backpack straps and spoke with the pragmatic tone of someone who'd already experienced homelessness twice in her short life. "We can stay at the shelter again. Miss Jennifer said we're always welcome back." The fact that her 7-year-old daughter had a contingency plan for homelessness made Claire's chest ache in ways that had nothing to do with the chronic cough she couldn't afford to have checked. She knelt down, pulling Maya into a hug that tried to communicate everything words couldn't. Safety, permanence, a future that didn't involve bouncing between temporary housing and the front seat of their 2006 Honda Civic. "I'm going to fix this, Maya. I promise." "I know, Mom. You always do." But Claire wasn't sure she could this time. She'd already burned through every option. Her brother Marcus had made it clear 6 months ago that family help was off the table. Her sister Vanessa had stopped answering calls after Claire asked for a loan to cover utilities. Her mother, when Claire had swallowed her pride and reached out last month, had simply said, "You made your choices, Claire. Now live with them." The choices her family referenced boiled down to one: having Maya at 19 with a boyfriend who disappeared the moment the pregnancy test showed positive. That single decision had apparently disqualified Claire from family support for the next 15 years. She walked Maya to the bus stop, watching her daughter join the other children with a smile that didn't quite hide the worry underneath. Maya had gotten good at pretending. Too good. She laughed at her classmates' jokes, shared her lunch, even though it meant going hungry herself, and never, ever mentioned that home was currently a studio apartment they were about to lose. Claire's phone buzzed as the bus pulled away. Unknown number. New Jersey area code. "Ms. Morrison? This is Leonard Ashford from Ashford and Associates in Princeton. I'm handling the estate of Patricia Fleming, your late aunt." Claire's mind went blank for a moment before placing the name. Aunt Patricia, her father's older sister. The family eccentric who'd never married, who'd lived alone in that old Victorian house in Princeton, who'd shown up to family gatherings with vintage dresses and strong opinions about modern culture. Claire had maybe spoken to her a dozen times over 34 years, most recently at her father's funeral 8 years ago. "I'm very sorry for your loss," Ashford continued when Claire didn't respond. "Patricia passed away 3 weeks ago. Heart failure. Very peaceful, according to her physician." I didn't know. No one told me." "Yes, well," Ashford's pause suggested he knew exactly why Claire's family had kept her in the dark. "Patricia's will is quite specific. She left you something. A hope chest. It was apparently very important to her that you receive it personally." Claire's throat tightened. A hope chest. The kind of thing brides collected linens and dishes in back when getting married was the pinnacle of female ambition. Completely useless to a broke single mother 3 days from eviction. "Mr. Ashford, I appreciate the thought, but I'm in the middle of a housing crisis right now. I can't really. There's also a small stipend for transportation and handling. $500. Patricia wanted to make sure you could retrieve it without financial hardship. $500. Enough to buy them time. Maybe 2 weeks in a cheap motel while Claire figured out next steps. Maybe a security deposit on a new place if she could find a landlord desperate enough to overlook her credit score. When can I come get it? I'm available this afternoon if that works for you. My office is in Princeton, about an hour from Newark." Claire checked her watch. She had a shift at the diner starting at 2, but this was more important. She'd call in sick. Risk losing the job that barely paid enough to matter anyway. I'll be there by noon. The drive to Princeton felt like crossing into a different universe. Newark's tired streets and chain-link fences gave way to Princeton's manicured lawns and historic architecture. Old money whispered from every corner, from the university campus to the boutique shops to the houses that probably cost more than Claire would earn in her entire lifetime. Ashford's office occupied the second floor of a brick building that had probably stood since the Revolutionary War. The reception area smelled like old books and furniture polish, everything designed to communicate tradition and stability and the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Leonard Ashford was 70, if he was a day, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses and the careful enunciation of someone who'd spent a lifetime managing other people's money. He shook Claire's hand with surprising warmth and gestured to a leather chair that probably cost more than her car. "Thank you for coming so promptly, Ms. Morrison. May I offer you coffee? Tea?" "I'm fine, thank you." She wasn't fine. She was exhausted and terrified and completely out of place in this office, where everything from the carpet to the oil paintings screamed old money. But accepting hospitality felt like admitting weakness, and Claire had learned to guard what little dignity poverty left her. Ashford settled behind his desk, pulling out a file that bore her aunt's name in neat typewritten letters. Patricia was quite clear about her wishes regarding this particular bequest. The Hope chest has been in the Fleming family for over 100 years. It originally belonged to Patricia's grandmother, made the journey from Ireland to New York in 1891. Claire tried to muster appropriate interest while calculating whether $500 would actually cover a motel and security deposit or if she'd have to choose between them. "It's a beautiful piece," Ashford continued. "Cedar and oak construction, hand-carved details. Patricia valued it tremendously, but she felt quite strongly that it should go to you. Specifically, did she say why?" Ashford's expression shifted to something that might have been sadness. "Patricia watched your family from a distance, Ms. Morrison. She attended gatherings, but rarely participated, observed rather than engaged. She told me once that you reminded her of herself at your age, determined to make your own way despite family disapproval." The description hit closer than Claire expected. She'd spent her entire adult life proving she could survive without her family's help, mostly because they'd made it clear help wasn't coming. Patricia had apparently noticed. "The Hope chest is currently in storage," Ashford said, sliding a business card across the desk. "This facility in Hamilton. They're expecting you. Just show identification and they'll release it to you." He handed her an envelope containing the $500 in cash and a key on a tarnished brass ring. "This opens the chest. Patricia was quite insistent that you receive both the chest and its contents intact. Don't let anyone talk you out of keeping it." The phrasing was odd, specific enough to suggest Patricia had anticipated resistance. But from whom? Claire's family barely acknowledged she existed. Who would care about an old Hope chest going to the family disappointment? She thanked Ashford, tucked the envelope into her purse, and drove to the storage facility with Maya's face in her mind. 7 years old and already fluent in the vocabulary of poverty. Already planning for homelessness like it was inevitable rather than catastrophic. The Hope chest sat in a climate-controlled unit, covered with a dust cloth that suggested it had been here for months. Claire pulled the cloth away and caught her breath. It was beautiful, nearly 4 feet long and 2 feet deep, made from wood that had darkened to honey gold with age. The front panel featured carved roses and vines, intricate enough that someone had clearly spent months creating them. Brass hinges and corner braces had tarnished to soft green, and the whole thing rested on carved claw feet that looked like they belonged in a museum. Claire ran her fingers over the carving, feeling the ridges and valleys that someone's hands had shaped over a century ago. She could almost imagine Patricia's grandmother packing this chest with whatever belongings she could carry from Ireland, everything she owned fitting into this single piece of furniture. The key turned smoothly despite the lock's age. Inside, the chest smelled of cedar and something else. Lavender maybe, or the specific scent that old fabric acquired after decades of careful storage. Linens filled most of the space. Tablecloths embroidered with flowers and vines. napkins with hand-tatted edges, pillowcases trimmed with lace so delicate it looked like frost. Everything yellowed, slightly with age, but still beautiful, still functional, still carrying the weight of whoever had made them stitch by careful stitch. Beneath the linens, wrapped in tissue paper, Claire found a wedding dress. Ivory silk, simple cut, pearl buttons running down the back. Patricia's grandmother's wedding dress, probably. Or maybe Patricia's mother's. The kind of heirloom that families pass down through generations, each bride adding her own story to the fabric. Claire lifted it carefully, expecting to find the chest empty beneath it. Instead, her fingers brushed paper. A letter, addressed in elegant script to Claire Morrison, should she find this. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. Patricia's handwriting, she assumed, though she had no real basis for comparison. Dear Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've received what our family would consider a worthless antique. Your siblings will tell you to sell it, to get rid of the clutter, to be practical. Your mother will say, I was a foolish old woman who should have left you something useful. Don't listen to them. This chest has more value than they could possibly imagine. Not sentimental value, though it has that too. Real value. The kind that changes lives. I watched you grow up from the edges of family gatherings. Watch how they treated you after Maya was born. Watch them take, and take while offering nothing in return. You deserve better then. You deserve better now. What you do with this gift is your choice, but I hope you'll use it to build the life you've been fighting for. Give Maya what she deserves. Give yourself what you deserve. And when your family comes demanding their share, remember, this is yours. I left it to you specifically because you're the only one who earned it. With admiration and hope, Aunt Patricia, Claire read the letter 3 times, trying to understand what Patricia meant by real value. The chest itself was probably worth a few $1,000s to an antique dealer. The linens maybe a few hundred more if they were rare enough. Hardly life-changing money, but more than Claire had right now. The facility manager helped her load the chest into her car's trunk, where it barely fit with the lid sticking up slightly. Claire drove back to Newark with Patricia's words circling through her mind. More value than they could possibly imagine. What had her aunt seen that Claire was missing? She unloaded the chest in their apartment with help from Mr. Chun, the elderly neighbor who'd always been kind despite Claire's frequently late rent payments. He studied the carved roses with appreciation. This is very fine work. Very old. You should take good care of it. I will. Maya came home from school to find the Hope chest sitting in their small living room, completely dominating the space. Her eyes went wide. Mom, that's so pretty. Where did it come from? Aunt Patricia, your great-great-aunt. She passed away and left it to me. Maya ran her fingers over the carved with the same way Claire had, with careful reverence for something beautiful and old. What's inside? Linens mostly. Old tablecloths and things. Can we keep it? The question carried weight that had nothing to do with furniture. In Maya's experience, nice things didn't last. They got sold when money got tight, left behind when they moved, taken away by landlords or repo men or the simple mathematics of poverty. Yeah, baby, we're keeping it. Claire's phone rang that evening. Marcus's number. Her brother's voice came through tight with barely contained irritation. Mom said you got Aunt Patricia's Hope chest. Word traveled fast in families that mostly communicated through judgment and gossip. Yeah, I picked it up this afternoon. That thing's an antique, Claire. Probably worth decent money. You should sell it. Use the cash to get your life together. The suggestion that Claire's life needed getting together stung, mostly because it was true. But the casual assumption that she'd immediately liquidate Patricia's gift to solve temporary problems felt like exactly what her aunt had warned against. I'm keeping it. Marcus's laugh held no warmth. Of course you are. Sentimental, over-practical. That's always been your problem. My problem is that my family stole $8,000 from me 3 years ago and never paid it back. The silence that followed was brittle and sharp. Then Marcus, voice colder, those were loans, Claire. We had our own problems. I had problems too. I had a 6-year-old daughter and no savings because I gave it all to you and Vanessa when you promised you'd pay me back. Remember that? The promises? This is why we don't help you anymore. You can't let things go. You never helped me to begin with. You took. There's a difference." She hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking with anger rather than fear this time. Patricia had been right. They'd already started circling, already trying to convince her the chest was worthless except as currency to solve problems they'd helped create. Vanessa called an hour later. Her sister's voice carried the careful concern she used when trying to manipulate people. "Marcus told me about the hope chest. Claire, honey, I know you're attached to it, but be realistic. You need money, not furniture. I need family that doesn't only call when they want something. That's not fair. We've tried to help." When exactly did you try to help?" Vanessa's pause stretched long enough to prove Claire's point. "This isn't about the past. This is about making smart choices now. That chest could bring in enough for first month, last month, and security deposit. You could actually get stable housing. Or I could keep something Aunt Patricia specifically left to me and figure out housing another way. You're being stubborn. I'm being grateful. Patricia thought I deserved this. I'm not going to prove her wrong by selling it the first time things get hard. Things are always hard for you, Claire, because you make bad choices." The words landed like they always did, finding the vulnerable places where Claire still believed them. Maybe she did make bad choices. Maybe keeping an antique chest while facing eviction was just more evidence of poor judgment. But something about Patricia's letter stopped her from agreeing. Her aunt had watched from the edges of family gatherings and seen something worth protecting, had decided Claire deserved more than her family was willing to give. She ended the call and stood in front of the hope chest, studying it in the apartment's dim lighting. The carved roses seemed to catch shadows, creating depth that shifted as Claire moved. The brass hinges gleamed despite their tarnish. Maya appeared beside her, small hand slipping into Claire's. "Are you going to sell it?" "No, baby. I'm going to keep it like Aunt Patricia wanted." "Good." Maya leaned against her mother's side. "It's the prettiest thing we've ever had." That night, after Maya fell asleep, Claire examined the chest more carefully. She removed all the linens, checking for anything she'd missed during the first inspection. The interior was smooth cedar, though it fitted so precisely that she could barely see the seams. The bottom felt solid under her fingers, no give or flex that might suggest hidden compartments. She ran her hands along the sides, the back, looking for anything unusual. Secret drawers were common in antique furniture. Maybe Patricia had hidden something valuable. But after an hour of searching, she found nothing except beautiful craftsmanship and the faint smell of cedar. Whatever Patricia had meant by real value, it wasn't immediately obvious. The eviction deadline arrived with mathematical precision. 72 hours passed and became 0 hours, and Claire found herself packing their belongings into garbage bags while Maya sat on the hope chest, silent and watchful. The $500 from Ashford had covered 3 nights in a motel near the diner where Claire worked, but that money was gone now. The next step was the shelter, and after that, the car. Mr. Chun helped carry their bags down to the Civic while the new tenant watched from the parking lot. A young couple excited about their first apartment, probably unaware that the previous occupant had just been displaced into uncertainty. "You'll land on your feet," Mr. Chun said, though his eyes suggested he knew better. "You always do." Claire wanted to believe that, wanted to think resilience was enough, that fighting hard enough eventually led to winning. But she'd been fighting her entire adult life and was currently loading everything she owned into a car that barely ran. The hope chest barely fit in the back seat, taking up space that Maya would normally occupy. Her daughter squeezed into the front, backpack clutched her chest, eyes already scanning for parking lots that might let them sleep without calling the police. "Mom, where are we going?" Claire gripped the steering wheel, trying to formulate an answer that wouldn't terrify a 7-year-old. But the truth was she didn't know. The shelter had a waiting list. The motel was too expensive for more than a night or two. Family wasn't an option. "We'll figure it out, baby. We always do." They spent that night in a 24-hour diner's parking lot, the hope chest visible in the rearview mirror, taking up space they desperately needed. Maya fell asleep around midnight, curled into as small a ball as possible to fit in the front seat. Claire stayed awake, watching headlights pass on the highway, and wondered what Patricia had seen that made her think Claire deserved saving. Wondered if keeping the chest was stubborn pride or actual faith in her aunt's judgment. Her mother called the next morning, the first time they'd spoken since Claire asked for help with rent. "Vanessa told me you're living in your car again. We're between housing. It's temporary. You could fix this, Claire. Sell that ridiculous chest Patricia left you and get an apartment. The chest isn't worth enough to solve anything long-term. So you'd rather be homeless with a piece of furniture than temporarily housed without it? That's the kind of thinking that got you here." The accusation stung because it contained truth. Claire's choices had contributed to her situation. Having Maya at 19, trusting family members who promised to repay loans, prioritizing stability over income by taking a waitressing job near Maya's school instead of higher-paying work farther away. But those choices had also given her a daughter who was brave and kind and smart, had taught her self-reliance that didn't depend on people who'd proven unreliable, had shown her that surviving was its own accomplishment, even when surviving was all you could manage. "I'm keeping the chest. Then enjoy sleeping in your car. Don't call me when this gets worse." The line went dead. Claire sat in the diner's parking lot and tried not to cry where Maya might see. A week passed. Then two. They rotated between parking lots, sometimes sleeping, sometimes just existing in the strange limbo of homelessness. Maya continued attending school, though Claire had to get creative about drop-off and pickup times to hide their housing situation. The Hope chest stayed in the back seat, this beautiful, impractical reminder of Patricia's faith in Claire's judgment. People asked about it. Fellow parking lot residents, shelter staff, the gas station attendant who let them use the bathroom. "Why are you keeping furniture when you don't have a house?" Claire didn't have a good answer except that Patricia had asked her to, had specifically warned against letting family pressure her into selling, had believed the chest held value beyond the obvious. She started researching. Late nights in the library while Maya did homework, Claire searched for information about antique Hope chests. Values range from a few hundred to several thousand, depending on age, condition, and provenance. The Fleming family chest, with its hand-carved details and documented history back to 1891, might bring 5,000 or 6,000 from the right collector. Enough to matter, not enough to change their lives permanently. Claire photographed the chest from every angle, posted it to antique forums, and asked for appraisals. The responses came back uniformly impressed, but financially disappointing. Beautiful piece. Excellent condition. Probably worth $4,000 to $6,000 to the right buyer. She stared at those numbers and tried to do math that would make them sufficient. For 1,000 covered 2 months' rent. Maybe 3 if she found somewhere cheap enough. A security deposit. First and last month. It will buy time. Not solutions, but time. And time was what she needed to find work that paid better, to save up, to build towards stability. But Patricia's letter echoed in her mind. This chest has more value than they could possibly imagine. Not sentimental value, though it has that too. Real value. What was she missing? On a Friday afternoon 3 weeks after the eviction, Claire sat in the library with the chest beside her, Maya doing math homework at the next table. She'd pulled up every resource she could find about antique furniture, secret compartments, hidden valuables. The techniques varied. False bottoms activated by pressing specific carvings. Drawers concealed behind decorative panels. Compartments built into thick sides or elaborate feet. She tried them all, pressing every carved rose, every brass fitting, every corner and edge. The chest remained stubbornly solid, beautiful, and apparently exactly what it appeared to be. Maya looked up from her homework, chewing on her pencil. "Mom, why do you keep touching all the flowers?" "I'm looking for a secret compartment. Old furniture sometimes has them." "Did you check underneath?" "The bottom?" "Yeah, it's solid cedar." "No give at all." "No, I mean outside underneath. The feet part." Claire blinked. She'd examined the interior bottom thoroughly, but hadn't thought to check the exterior underside. The chest sat on 4 carved claw feet, each one substantial enough to potentially hollow. She tilted the chest carefully, balancing it on its side while Maya held the library chair steady. The underside was smooth, unfinished, wood darkened by age. Nothing obviously unusual. But when Claire ran her hand along the bottom board, she felt something. A slight depression in the wood, barely perceptible unless you were looking for it. She pressed it experimentally. Nothing happened. She tried pressing harder. Still nothing. Maybe you have to press 2 places at once, Maya suggested, demonstrating with her fingers on the homework page. Claire felt along the bottom again, searching for a second depression. Found one near the opposite corner, symmetrical to the first. She pressed both simultaneously. The click was so quiet she almost missed it. Then a mechanical sound, gears or levers moving inside the chest's thick bottom panel. A seam appeared that hadn't been visible before, running the entire length of the bottom board. Claire's heart hammered as she carefully lowered the chest back to the floor. The bottom panel, which she'd assumed was solid cedar, had separated by about a 1/4 inch from the rest of the structure. She worked her fingers into the gap and pulled gently. The panel lifted away completely, revealing a space between the interior cedar bottom and the exterior oak base. A false bottom, constructed so precisely that it had been invisible until the hidden mechanism released it. Inside the hidden compartment lay a leather portfolio, old and cracked, but carefully preserved. Claire lifted it with shaking hands and placed it on the library table. Maya scooted her chair closer. Homework forgotten. What is it? I don't know, baby. Claire opened the portfolio carefully, afraid the old leather might crumble. Inside, she found documents protected by acid-free paper, organized in a way that suggested Patricia had prepared this carefully, knowing exactly what she was leaving behind. The first page was a handwritten inventory in Patricia's elegant script, contents of the Fleming Hope chest. False bottom compartment. Prepared for Claire Morrison. 1. Stock certificates, various companies, purchased 1950 to 1992. Bearer bonds, U.S. Treasury, purchased 1960 to 1985. 3. Property deed, Princeton Commercial Real Estate. 4. Letters of provenance for investment items. 5. Contact information for estate attorney and financial advisor. 6. Personal letter to Claire. 7. Authentication documents and appraisals. 2023. Claire's hands trembled as she turned to the next page. Stock certificates, thick paper with ornate borders and official seals. Companies she recognized because they'd become household names. IBM, 500 shares, purchased 1952 at $18 per share. Microsoft, 1,000 shares, purchased 1986 at $21 per share. Apple, 2,000 shares, purchased 1980 at $22 per share. Berkshire Hathaway, 100 shares, purchased 1965 at $18 per share. The list went on. Page after page of stock certificates representing companies that had grown from risky investments into titans of American industry. Patricia had been buying stocks for 40 years, carefully selecting companies she believed in, holding them through decades of market fluctuations. Beneath the stock certificates, Claire found bearer bonds. These were different, issued by the U.S. Treasury and payable to whoever held them. Patricia had been buying them since the 1960s, tucking them away in this hidden compartment while the interest compounded. $500,000 in bonds, various maturity dates, all authenticated and verified. Claire couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was seeing. This wasn't possible. People didn't hide fortunes in hope chests. Families didn't leave life-changing wealth to relatives they barely knew. But Patricia apparently had. Maya tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mom, are you okay? You look weird." I need a minute, baby." Claire turned to the next section. A property deed for a commercial building in Princeton, New Jersey. The address was on Nassau Street, prime real estate near the university. Patricia had purchased it in 1968 for $125,000. Current property values in that area ran into millions. The personal letter lay beneath everything else, Patricia's handwriting filling 3 pages with words Claire read through tears that made the ink blur. "Dear Claire, by now you've found what I've been building for you since the day Maya was born. I watched your family turn their backs on you. Watch them take what little you had and offer nothing in return. I couldn't intervene while I was alive without creating conflict that would have made your situation worse. But I could prepare. I could build something that would change your life and Maya's life when the time was right. The investments in this chest represent 40 years of patient accumulation. I lived modestly, spent little, and invested carefully. Every stock certificate, every bond, every asset was purchased with the future in mind. With you in mind, even before I knew you'd need it. I've had everything authenticated and appraised as of March 2023. The total estimated value is $289 million. Claire, you've survived circumstances that would have broken most people. You've raised a beautiful, brave daughter despite having no support. You've maintained your integrity when the easy path was to become bitter. You earned this, not through blood relation, but through character. Your family will come. They'll demand shares, claim I was incompetent, argue that the fortune should be divided equally among my nieces and nephews. Stand firm. I was of completely sound mind when I prepared this gift. I had excellent legal counsel. Everything is documented, authenticated, and legally yours. Use this wealth to build the life you deserve. Give Maya opportunities she's earned through surviving alongside you. And maybe, if you're willing, help other single mothers who are fighting the same battles you fought. The world needs more people like you, Claire. People who keep fighting when giving up would be easier. People who choose character over convenience. With deep admiration and love, Aunt Patricia P.S. I've set up a trust structure to protect these assets. Leonard Ashford has all the details. The initial tax burden will be substantial, but I've arranged for liquidity to cover it. Don't let anyone convince you to make hasty decisions. Take your time. Learn. Build carefully. Claire sat in the library with $289 million in assets spread across the table in front of her and couldn't make her brain accept it as real. This didn't happen to people like her. Fortunes didn't materialize in antique furniture. Single mothers living in their cars didn't become wealthy overnight. But the documents were authentic. Patricia's careful organization, the authentication stamps dated just months ago, the legal precision of every item, all pointed to something impossible that was somehow true. Maya stared at the papers with wide eyes. "Mom, what does this mean?" Claire pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of cheap shampoo and childhood resilience, and tried to find words. "It means Aunt Patricia loved us. It means we're going to be okay. It means everything's about to change." The librarian approached their table, concerned expression suggesting they'd been making too much noise. The librarian's concern shifted to alarm when she saw Claire's face, tears streaming, body shaking with something between shock and hysteria. Maya gripped her mother's arm, her own face pale with worry. "Ma'am, do you need me to call someone? Are you having a medical emergency?" Claire forced herself to breathe, to gather the documents back into the portfolio with trembling hands. "No, I'm fine. We're fine. Just processing some unexpected news." The librarian's skepticism was evident, but she backed away, leaving them alone with the weight of what they discovered. Claire carefully returned all the documents to the portfolio, then fitted the false bottom panel back into place. The mechanism clicked softly, sealing the hidden compartment so completely that no one would know it existed unless they knew exactly where to press. She looked at Maya, at this brave 7-year-old who'd learned to sleep in cars and plan for homelessness, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Baby, we need to go see Mr. Ashford. Right now." They loaded the Hope chest back into the Civic with care that bordered on paranoia. Claire kept checking the parking lot for anyone watching, suddenly hyper-aware that she was transporting hundreds of millions of dollars in assets in a car that barely ran. The drive to Princeton felt endless. Every red light, every slow driver, every moment stuck in traffic amplified Claire's anxiety. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror at the Hope chest, half expecting it to disappear like a fever dream. Maya sat quietly, sensing her mother's tension. "Mom, is the money real? Like, actually real?" "I think so. The documents look real. But Mr. Ashford will know for sure." "What happens if it is real?" Claire's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Then everything changes, Maya. Everything. Leonard Ashford's secretary looked startled when Claire appeared in the waiting room. No appointment, clearly disheveled, dragging a 7-year-old and requesting an immediate meeting. Mr. Ashford is with a client. If you'd like to schedule, tell him Claire Morrison found Patricia Fleming's portfolio. He'll want to see me now. The secretary's expression shifted from polite dismissal to sharp attention. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then nodded. He'll be with you in 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes felt like hours. Claire sat with the portfolio clutched to her chest while Maya pressed against her side, both of them vibrating with anxious energy. Other clients in the waiting room glanced at them curiously, probably wondering what emergency had brought a woman in thrift store clothes and a child into an estate attorney's office without warning. When Ashford emerged, his professional composure slipped for just a moment. He took in Claire's face, the portfolio in her hands, and Maya's wide-eyed tension. An understanding flickered across his features. "Ms. Morrison, please come to my office immediately." He closed the door behind them and turned to Claire with an expression that mixed relief and concern. "You found it. The false bottom." Maya figured out how to open it. Claire placed the portfolio on his desk with hands that still shook. Ashford opened it carefully, checking contents he'd clearly seen before, and nodded. "Everything appears to be in order. Patricia prepared this portfolio 6 months before her death. She had me authenticate every document, verify every asset, establish the legal framework for transfer. She was absolutely meticulous." "Is it real? All of it? The stocks, the bonds, the property?" "Very real, Ms. Morrison. Patricia Fleming spent 40 years building this portfolio with one purpose: to give you and your daughter financial security. She consulted with tax attorneys, financial advisors, estate planners. Everything is documented, legal, and yours." Claire sank into the chair, legs suddenly unable to support her weight. $289 million. Approximately, yes. The exact figure fluctuates with market conditions, but Patricia's last appraisal in March valued. "Let's wait until everything is official. But soon, yeah. You can tell whoever you want." That night, they ordered room service, something Claire hadn't done since before Maya was born. Pizza and chicken fingers and fries and sodas spread across the desk like a feast. They ate on real plates with metal silverware, sitting on comfortable furniture in a climate-controlled room where everything worked. Maya fell asleep early, exhausted by the emotional weight of the day. Claire tucked her in and stood at the window, looking out at Princeton's lights and trying to make sense of the past 12 hours. This morning, she'd been homeless, desperate, 3 weeks away from complete collapse. Tonight, she was technically worth over $250 million, though most of it was still locked in assets that required time to access. The Hope chest sat in the corner of the hotel room, this beautiful antique that had held Patricia's carefully constructed gift. Claire ran her fingers over the carved roses and felt gratitude so intense it threatened to overwhelm her. Her phone rang. "Marcus, she'd been expecting this." "Is it true? Mom said you're claiming Aunt Patricia left you hundreds of millions in that Hope chest?" No greeting. No concern about where Claire and Maya were staying. Just immediate interrogation about money. "Patricia left me her investment portfolio." "Yes, that's insane. She barely knew you. Why would she leave that much money to you instead of dividing it among all of us?" Claire kept her voice steady. "Because she chose to. It was her money, her decision. Family means sharing, Claire. You can't just keep everything for yourself." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Like you shared when I gave you $3,000 for car repairs and you bought a boat. Like Vanessa shared when she took my last $500 and never mentioned it again. Those were loans. We had our own problems. So did I, Marcus. I had a daughter to feed. But you didn't care about that then. So forgive me if I don't care about your problems now. His voice went hard. "You're going to regret this, Claire. We're family. We have rights." "No, you don't. Patricia left this to me specifically. She documented every reason why. And if you try to fight it, you'll lose and look like the greedy opportunist you are." She hung up before he could respond, blocking his number immediately after. Then she blocked Vanessa's number, then her mother's. then her father's and 3 cousins who'd never bothered speaking to her before. The peace that followed felt fragile but real. The next call came from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Morrison? This is Victoria Chun. Leonard Ashford asked me to reach out. I understand you've had quite a day." Victoria's voice carried calm professionalism with an underlying warmth that immediately put Claire at ease. They talked for 30 minutes, Victoria explaining in clear terms what the portfolio contained, what it meant, what steps came next. "The first priority is protecting these assets," Victoria said. "We'll establish a trust structure that shields the wealth from legal challenges, excessive taxation, and poor decision-making during the adjustment period. Most people who receive sudden wealth lose it within 5 years because they don't have proper guidance." "I don't want to lose it." "Then we'll make sure you don't." Patricia chose her investments carefully. These are stable, long-term holdings that will continue growing if properly managed. My recommendation is that we leave most of the portfolio intact, liquidating only what's necessary for immediate needs and tax obligations. They scheduled a meeting for Monday morning. Victoria would bring her team, walk Claire through everything in detail, and begin the formal management process. "Ms. Morrison, one more thing. Take this weekend to rest. Don't make any major decisions. Don't tell anyone else about the portfolio. Just breathe and let yourself adjust. Sudden wealth is traumatic even when it's wonderful. Give yourself time." Claire thanked her and ended the call, struck by Victoria's understanding that receiving $289 million could be traumatic. But it was. Her entire identity had been built around surviving scarcity. Every decision for 15 years had been filtered through the question, can I afford this? Now that filter was gone, and Claire felt unmoored. Like gravity had suddenly shifted, and she didn't know which way was up. She spent Saturday taking Maya to Princeton's parks, eating at restaurants without checking prices first, buying clothes that didn't come from Goodwill. Small things that felt revolutionary. Maya got new shoes that actually fit, a winter coat that wasn't 3 sizes too big, jeans without patches or holes. Claire watched her daughter's face light up with each new item and felt years of guilt and inadequacy start to loosen their grip. In a bookstore, Maya lingered in front of a display of hardcover novels, the kind with beautiful covers and pristine pages. She'd learned young to only ask for things from the library, never expecting to own books of her own. "Pick some," Claire said. "As many as you want." Maya turned to her mother with wide eyes. Really? We can afford books now, baby. We can afford anything." They left with 12 hardcover novels, Maya clutching the bag like treasure, which it was Claire realized, not because of the cost, but because it represented something Maya had never had before, the luxury of choosing things just because she wanted them. Sunday morning, Claire's phone rang from another unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously. "Ms. Morrison? This is Detective Sarah Reeves with the Princeton Police Department. I need to speak with you about Patricia Fleming's estate." Claire's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong? We've received complaints from Patricia Fleming's relatives claiming you may have stolen documents from her estate. Specifically, investment portfolios that should have been divided among all heirs." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Claire forced herself to breathe, to stay calm, to remember what Ashford had said about Patricia's documentation being ironclad. "Detective Reeves, Patricia Fleming left those documents to me legally. Her attorney, Leonard Ashford, can confirm everything. This is her family trying to get access to assets they have no legal right to. Can you come to the station this afternoon? We need to verify the documents and confirm the chain of custody." Claire agreed, hung up, and immediately called Ashford. He answered on the second ring, his voice sharp with concern when she explained. "That's harassment, pure and simple. Your family is trying to use law enforcement to intimidate you. Don't worry. I'll meet you at the station with all of Patricia's documentation. We'll shut this down quickly." At the Princeton police station, Claire found Detective Reeves to be professional but skeptical. She was mid-40s with tired eyes that had probably seen too many family disputes dressed up as legal concerns. "Ms. Morrison, your relatives claim Patricia Fleming was mentally incompetent when she allegedly left you a substantial fortune. They say you manipulated an elderly woman who wasn't thinking clearly. Before Claire could respond, Ashford swept in with a briefcase and an expression that could have frozen water. Detective Reeves, I'm Leonard Ashford, Patricia Fleming's estate attorney for 30 years. These accusations are completely false and constitute harassment of my client. He opened his briefcase, pulling out documents with the efficiency of someone who'd anticipated exactly this scenario. Patricia Fleming underwent comprehensive mental competency evaluations 6 months before her death. 2 independent psychiatrists confirmed she was of completely sound mind. Those evaluations are right here, along with her explicit statements about why she chose to leave her portfolio to Claire Morrison. He spread documents across the detective's desk. Medical evaluations, psychiatric assessments, Patricia's own written statements explaining her reasoning in detail, letters from her personal physician confirming her mental clarity right up until her death. Furthermore, Ashford continued, voice cutting like surgical steel, Patricia specifically anticipated challenges from her family. She documented decades of their behavior toward Claire, establishing a clear pattern of financial abuse and abandonment. Those complaints your department received, they proved Patricia's judgment was correct. Detective Reeves read through the documents with increasing recognition that she'd been dragged into a family dispute with no legitimate criminal component. She looked at Claire with something approaching sympathy. Ms. Morrison, I apologize for the inconvenience. These documents clearly establish the legitimacy of your inheritance. There's no case here. She turned to Ashford. Do you want to file harassment charges against the family members who made these false reports? Ashford looked at Claire, letting her make the decision. She thought about Marcus and Vanessa, about her mother's cold dismissal, about 15 years of being treated like family failure, about their willingness to weaponize law enforcement in an attempt to intimidate her out of what Patricia had legally left her. Yes, I want it documented. I want a restraining order preventing them from contacting me or Maya. And I want it clear that any further attempts to challenge this inheritance will result in additional legal action. Detective Reeves nodded, making notes. We'll process that today. With Mr. Ashford's documentation, it should be straightforward. They left the station with the legal high ground firmly established. Claire felt something shift in her chest, anger replacing fear, determination overriding the impulse to shrink away from conflict. Patricia had believed she deserved this, had built it specifically for her, had anticipated every challenge and prepared defenses against them. The least Claire could do was stand firm. Monday morning's meeting with Victoria Chen revealed the full scope of what Patricia had built. Victoria's office occupied the top floor of a building near Princeton University, all glass walls and modern furniture and technology that probably cost more than Claire had earned in her entire life. Victoria herself was 50-something, with silver-streaked black hair and the calm confidence of someone who'd guided hundreds of clients through wealth management. Her team included a tax specialist, a legal advisor, and an investment analyst, all assembled to help Claire navigate sudden wealth. Let's start with what you actually have, Victoria said, pulling up displays on a massive screen. The IBM shares Patricia bought for $18 in 1952 were now worth over $9,000 each. 500 shares originally costing $9,000 were currently valued at $4. $5 million. The Microsoft shares purchased for $21 in 1986 had split multiple times and were now worth approximately $380 each. 1,000 shares originally costing $21,000 were currently valued at $42 million. The Apple shares purchased for $22 in 1980 had split so many times that Patricia's original 2,000 shares had become over 100,000 shares. Current value, approximately $17 million. The Berkshire Hathaway shares purchased for $18 in 1965 were now worth over $540,000 each. 100 shares originally costing $1,800 were currently valued at $54 million. Victoria walked through every holding systematically, showing how Patricia's patient investments had compounded over decades into staggering returns. The total portfolio value, including bonds and real estate, stood at $289 per million as of last Friday's market close. After tax obligations, Victoria said, pulling up a new screen, you'll have approximately $173 million in liquid assets and continuing portfolio holdings. That's enough to generate roughly $7 million annually in passive income if properly structured. Claire's brain couldn't process the numbers. $7 million a year without working. More money than she could have earned in multiple lifetimes of waitressing. Maya, sitting quietly beside her mother throughout the presentation, raised her hand like she was in school. Victoria smiled. Yes, Maya. Does this mean we can get a house? Like our own house that nobody can take away? The question's innocence cut through all the financial complexity to what actually mattered. Victoria's expression softened. Yes, honey, you can get a house. Several houses if you want. And nobody can ever take them away. They spent 3 hours discussing strategy. Victoria recommended leaving most of the portfolio intact, allowing the investments to continue growing. They'd liquidate a small percentage to cover immediate tax obligations and establish Claire's new life, but the bulk would remain invested. Sudden wealth destroys most people because they try to spend it all immediately, Victoria explained. Your advantage is that you've lived with scarcity. You understand value. We're going to use that wisdom to preserve and grow these assets for Maya's generation and beyond. The tax burden would be paid through a combination of bond redemptions and strategic stock sales that minimized additional capital gains. Samuel Rodriguez, the tax attorney, had structures prepared that were completely legal and would save Claire millions in unnecessary taxation. The IRS will receive every penny legally owed, Samuel assured her. But we're not going to volunteer extra through poor planning. They established accounts, transfer protocols, security measures. Claire received a new phone with encrypted communication for financial matters. Victoria's team would handle all investment decisions, providing Claire with monthly reports but protecting her from the stress of active management. Your job, Victoria said firmly, is to adjust to your new life, take care of Maya, and eventually figure out what you want to do with this platform Patricia built for you. Our job is making sure the money works for you instead of the other way around. By Monday afternoon, Claire had more financial infrastructure than she'd ever imagined needing. Accounts at multiple institutions, each one holding amounts that would have seemed fictional days ago. A team of professionals whose entire purpose was protecting and growing her wealth. And a hope chest sitting in their hotel room, now empty of its hidden fortune, but still beautiful, still carrying the weight of Patricia's careful planning and deep faith in Claire's character. Tuesday brought the formal reading of Patricia's will, required by law even though the primary asset had already been transferred through the carefully structured portfolio. Patricia's relatives assembled at Ashford's office, faces ranging from hopeful to openly hostile. Marcus and Vanessa sat together, their lawyer between them, a sharp-featured woman named Helen Brooks who'd clearly been hired to challenge the will. Claire's mother sat alone, her expression cold and judgmental. Two cousins Claire barely knew occupied chairs near the window, probably hoping for surprise inheritances. Ashford read the will in his steady, professional voice. Small bequest to charities. A few pieces of jewelry divided among distant relatives. The Princeton house left to the Historical Society for preservation. And then, to my niece Claire Morrison, I leave the Fleming family hope chest, its contents, and any other asset specifically designated for her according to arrangements made with my attorney Leonard Ashford. Helen Brooks stood immediately. We're contesting this while on grounds of mental incompetency and undue influence. Patricia Fleming was 87 years old, isolated, and clearly manipulated by a relative who exploited her vulnerability. Ashford didn't look surprised. He pulled out yet another file, this one even thicker than previous ones. Patricia Fleming anticipated this exact challenge. I have here comprehensive documentation proving her mental competency, her deliberate choices, and her explicit reasons for those choices. I also have her recorded testimony, given 6 months before her death, explaining everything. He pressed play on a laptop. Patricia's face filled the screen, sitting in what appeared to be Ashford's office, looking directly at the camera with clear, sharp eyes. My name is Patricia Catherine Fleming. Today is March 15th, 2023. I am 87 years old and of completely sound mind, as will be confirmed by medical professionals whose evaluations are attached to this testimony. I am recording this because I know my relatives will challenge my decisions. They will claim I was senile, manipulated, not thinking clearly. They are wrong. I have observed my family for decades. I have watched them take from Claire Morrison while offering nothing in return. I have documented their betrayals, their cruelty, their willingness to abandon her and her daughter in desperate circumstances. I chose to leave my assets to Claire not because of blood relation, but because she demonstrated character that deserves rewarding. She survived circumstances that would have destroyed most people. She raised a beautiful child with grace and dignity despite having no support. My other relatives proved themselves unworthy through their actions. This is not senility speaking. This is deliberate, careful judgment based on years of observation. To Marcus Morrison, you stole from your sister repeatedly and felt entitled to do so. You will receive nothing from me. To Vanessa Hayes, you took advantage of Claire's generosity and laughed about it with others. You will receive nothing from me. To my nephew Gerald Morrison, you turned your back on your daughter when she needed you most. You will receive nothing from me. To anyone who challenges this will, you are proving exactly why I made these choices. Claire earned this inheritance through character. You lost it through lack of character. The difference matters. Patricia's image leaned forward slightly, her expression fierce despite her age. I'm not confused. I'm not incompetent. I'm not being manipulated. I am simply ensuring that my life's work goes to someone who will honor it. Someone who understands what it means to fight, to survive, to maintain integrity when easier paths exist. Claire Morrison is my worthy heir. This recording, along with all supporting documentation, will prove that beyond any doubt. The video ended. The conference room sat in absolute silence. Helen Brooks tried to rally. This testimony could have been coerced, recorded under duress. Ashford cut her off. There are 6 witnesses to this recording, including 2 psychiatrists who evaluated Patricia immediately before and after. Their sworn statements confirm she was completely lucid, under no duress, and making these decisions of her own free will. Furthermore, Patricia underwent cognitive testing that placed her in the 95th percentile for her age group. She was sharper at 87 than most people are at 50. He distributed copies of the psychiatric evaluations, the witness statements, the cognitive testing results. Page after page of documentation that dismantled any possible challenge to Patricia's mental state. Marcus stood abruptly, his face red with anger. This is bullshit. Claire brainwashed her, convinced some old woman to leave her millions while the real family got nothing. The real family, Claire said quietly, finding her voice, stole $8,000 from me and never paid it back. The real family told me to figure out on my own when I was homeless. The real family only started caring about Aunt Patricia's money the moment they learned it existed. She stood, meeting Marcus's glare with surprising calm. Patricia watched all of you for decades. She saw exactly who you are. That's why she chose me. Not because I manipulated her, but because you prove yourselves unworthy. Vanessa's voice came sharp and wounded. We're your family, Claire. How can you be so selfish? Family means showing up when things get hard. None of you did. Patricia did. She built something for me and Maya because she understood what family actually means. Claire's mother finally spoke, her voice cold and cutting. You were always difficult, Claire. Always dramatic. Always playing the victim when the truth is you made bad choices and expected everyone else to fix them. The old accusation should have hurt. Should have triggered the familiar shame that had dogged Claire for 15 years. But standing in Ashford's office with $173 million in assets being legally transferred to her name, with Maya's safe in the hotel room, with a babysitter Victoria had recommended, with Patricia's fierce testimony still echoing in her ears, Claire felt something different. Peace. You're right, Mom. I didn't make bad choices. I trusted you when you said family meant something. I believed Marcus when he promised to pay me back. I thought Vanessa would help me the way I'd helped her. Those were definitely bad choices. Claire gathered her purse, preparing to leave. But the choice I'm making now, accepting what Patricia left me and building a life for my daughter, that's the best choice I've ever made. She walked out of the conference room with her head high, leaving her family to their anger and their grasping and their certainty that she didn't deserve what she'd received. Ashford caught up with her in the hallway. Ms. Morrison, they'll appeal. Probably file multiple challenges. But I want you to know, every single one will fail. Patricia's documentation is airtight. You will win. How long will it take? 6 months, maybe a year for all challenges to work through the courts. But the assets are protected. The trust structure shields everything. They can file all the motions they want. They won't touch a penny of what's yours. Claire nodded, feeling exhausted and relieved and strangely empty. She'd hoped, somewhere deep down, that maybe her family would be happy for her. That maybe sudden wealth would soften their judgment, make them want to reconcile. But Patricia had known better, had understood that some people only cared about taking, that blood relation didn't guarantee character, that families could be toxic even when they pretended otherwise. Back at the hotel, Maya looked up from her new books with a careful expression that suggested she'd been worrying. How did it go? Claire pulled her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of children's shampoo and resilience. They're fighting the will, but we're going to win. Aunt Patricia made sure of that. Are you sad about them being mean? Claire considered the question honestly. A little, but mostly I'm grateful. Patricia saw us, really saw us, and she decided we mattered. Maya hugged her mother fiercely. We do matter. Yeah, baby, we really do. That night, Claire sat cross-legged on the hotel room floor with a hope chest in front of her. The hidden compartment was empty now, its treasure transferred to secure accounts and legal structures. But the chest itself remained beautiful, its carved roses still catching light, its brass fittings still gleaming. She thought about Patricia selecting stocks in the 1950s when women weren't supposed to understand finance, buying shares of companies when they were risky investments, holding them through decades of market fluctuations, never selling even when times got hard, building something magnificent through patience and faith and absolutely certain belief that someday someone would need exactly what she was creating. Claire had been homeless a week ago, desperate and terrified and out of options. Tonight, she was worth over $170 million, with professionals protecting her assets and a family trying and failing to take what Patricia had built for her. The transformation was so complete, so impossible, that Claire's mind kept rejecting it as real. But Maya, sleeping peacefully in the next bed, new books stacked on the nightstand, was real. The cashier's check from Ashford sitting in Claire's wallet was real. The portfolio documents locked in the hotel safe were real. Patricia's faith in her had been real, and Claire was determined to prove that faith wasn't misplaced. She pulled out her phone and opened a notes app, starting a list of things to do with the wealth she'd been given. Help other single mothers facing what we faced. Establish shelters. Provide legal aid. Create job training programs. Fund education for kids whose parents can't afford it. The list grew as ideas flowed. Libraries, scholarships, medical debt relief. All the things Claire had desperately needed and couldn't access because resources were reserved for people who weren't as visibly struggling. She'd build something with Patricia's gift, something that honored the fight they'd survived and helped others survive it too. But first, tomorrow, she was going to find them a home. A real home, with rooms for both of them and a yard where Maya could play and windows that looked out at something other than parking lots. The house hunting began on Wednesday morning with a realtor Victoria had recommended, a woman named Catherine Walsh who specialized in high-end properties and understood discretion. Claire had given her simple criteria: safe neighborhood, good schools, space for Maya to be a child, and a place where the hope chest would look at home rather than out of place. Catherine showed them 12 houses over 3 days. Each one was beautiful in ways that would have seemed impossible a week ago. Hardwood floors and granite countertops, yards with trees and swing sets, neighborhoods where children rode bikes without fear and parents didn't count pennies at the grocery store. Maya loved them all at first, her enthusiasm genuine despite not understanding that any of these could actually be theirs. But by the fifth house, Claire noticed her daughter growing quieter, more reserved, less willing to imagine permanence. In the car between showings, Claire pulled over and turned to face Maya. "What's wrong, baby? I thought you wanted to pick out a house." Maya's voice came small and uncertain. "What if we move in and then we have to leave? What if something goes wrong and we lose it?" The question punched through Claire's chest. Maya had learned that good things were temporary, that stability came with expiration dates, that hoping for permanence was setting yourself up for disappointment. "We won't lose it, Maya. The house will be ours. Completely ours. No landlord can evict us. No one can take it away. When we choose a home, it's forever. Promise?" Claire pulled her daughter close, feeling the weight of a 7-year-old who'd learned to protect herself from hope. "I promise. We're never going to be homeless again. Never going to sleep in the car again. Never going to worry about where we'll live. That part of our life is over." Maya buried her face in her mother's shoulder and cried, releasing tension she'd been carrying for years. When the tears finally stopped, she looked up with red eyes and asked, "Can we see the one with the tree house again?" The house sat in Princeton proper, a 4-bedroom colonial on half an acre with mature oak trees and a backyard that felt like a private forest. The tree house had been built by the previous owners for their children, now grown and moved away. It needed some repairs, but was structurally sound, waiting for new children to bring it back to life. Inside, the house had the kind of warm elegance that Claire associated with families who'd never worried about money. Crown molding and bay windows, a kitchen with an island big enough to do homework at, a living room with a fireplace where the hope chest would sit like it had always belonged there. The master bedroom had an attached bathroom with a soaking tub that Claire stared at for a full minute, trying to remember the last time she'd taken a bath. Instead of a rushed shower, Maya claimed the bedroom with a window seat overlooking the backyard, already planning where her new books would go. "This one," Claire told Catherine. "How much?" "The asking price is $1. $2 million. It's been on the market for 3 months, so there's room for negotiation." A year ago, the number would have been incomprehensible. Today, it represented less than 1% of what Claire now possessed. She could buy this house with cash and barely notice the expense. "Offer asking price. I want to close as quickly as possible." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly, but she pulled out her phone to contact the seller's agent. "With a cash offer, we could potentially close in 2 weeks." 2 weeks. 14 days until Maya had a bedroom that couldn't be taken away, a tree house that was actually hers, a home where poverty wasn't constantly threatening to overwhelm everything. The offer was accepted within 3 hours. The sellers, an older couple relocating to Florida, were thrilled by the fast close and cash payment. Catherine handled the inspection, the paperwork, the endless details that came with purchasing real estate. Victoria's team arranged the wire transfer, moving $1. $2 million from Claire's newly established accounts to the seller's bank, like it was nothing. Because to the portfolio Patricia had built, it really was nothing. A rounding error, barely noticeable. Claire signed the closing documents 2 weeks later in a title company office, her hand shaking slightly as she wrote her name on papers that transferred ownership. The deed listed her as sole owner. No mortgage, no liens, no complications. Just Claire Morrison and a house that was completely, permanently hers. Maya bounced in her chair throughout the closing, unable to contain her excitement. When the title agent handed Claire the keys, Maya let out a shriek that made everyone in the office smile. "We have a house. Mom, we actually have a house." They drove to the property immediately, pulling into the driveway that was theirs, walking up steps that belonged to them, unlocking a door that would never keep them out. The house stood empty, waiting for furniture and life and the sounds of a family that had earned the right to permanence. Claire stood in the living room while Maya raced from room to room, her daughter's laughter echoing through empty spaces. The Hope chest sat by the door where the movers had left it, this beautiful antique that had contained Patricia's carefully planned miracle. She ran her fingers over the carved roses, feeling tears threaten again. "Thank you," she whispered to an aunt she'd barely known. "Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for believing we deserve this." The house took shape over the following weeks. Claire hired interior designers who worked with Maya to create spaces that felt both elegant and lived in. Furniture that was beautiful but functional, rooms that accommodated both formality and the chaos of childhood. Maya's bedroom became a sanctuary of books and art supplies and a reading nook in the window seat. The treehouse got renovated with new boards and a rope ladder and a pulley system for hauling up snacks and books. The kitchen filled with cooking equipment Claire had never owned, tools for making meals that didn't come from fast food restaurants or food banks. The Hope chest found its place in the living room, positioned near the fireplace where guests would see it first. Claire had it professionally appraised for insurance purposes, learning it was worth $8,500 even empty. A beautiful piece of history, the appraiser said, made more valuable by the story it carried. But the true value had nothing to do with wood and brass. It lived in what the chest had contained, in Patricia's decades of patient investment, in the life it had made possible. Schools presented their own adjustment. Maya had spent her entire educational career in underfunded urban schools where teachers were overwhelmed and resources were scarce. Princeton's public schools operated on a completely different level, with small class sizes and enrichment programs and teachers who had time to actually teach. Claire enrolled Maya in 3rd grade at Community Park Elementary, watching her daughter's eyes go wide at the library filled with new books, the art room with supplies that weren't rationed, the playground with equipment that hadn't been broken for years. The school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called Claire in during the 2nd week. Ms. Morrison, Maya is academically ahead in reading and math, but she's struggling socially. She hoards snacks in her desk, doesn't trust that lunch will be provided, and seems terrified of asking for help. Has she experienced food insecurity? Claire's throat tightened. "We were homeless until recently." She learned to save everything, to not count on meals being consistent. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened with understanding. "That explains a lot. We have resources for students transitioning from difficult circumstances. With your permission, I'd like to connect Maya with our social skills group and have her work with Ms. Chun, our counselor who specializes in trauma-informed support." The fact that Maya's poverty trauma was recognized and treated as something that deserved professional help made Claire want to cry. In Newark, teachers had been too overwhelmed to notice. Here, in this well-funded district with resources to spare, Maya's struggles mattered enough to address. "Yes, please. Whatever she needs." Maya began therapy sessions twice a week with Ms. Chun, learning that safety could be permanent, that abundance wasn't always followed by scarcity, that the world wouldn't punish her for relaxing her guard. The changes came slowly but steadily. Less hoarding, more willingness to trust, laughter that didn't sound like it was waiting for something bad to happen. Claire started her own therapy with a specialist Victoria recommended, someone who understood sudden wealth and the psychological complexity it created. Dr. Sarah Kim was 50-ish, with a calm presence and a direct way of speaking that cut through Claire's impulse to minimize her struggles. "You experienced a decade and a half of trauma," Dr. Kim said during their first session. "Poverty trauma, family abandonment, the constant threat of losing housing, food security, safety. That doesn't disappear just because you're suddenly wealthy. Your nervous system is still wired for survival." Claire found herself crying in Dr. Kim's office more than she expected, releasing grief and anger and fear she'd been carrying so long it had become part of her baseline. She cried for the 19-year-old who'd believed her family would help and learned they wouldn't. For the 20-something who'd fought to keep her daughter fed while working minimum wage jobs. For the 30-year-old sleeping in a car and trying to convince Maya that everything would be okay. "You survived," Dr. Kim said firmly. "That matters. You kept Maya safe and yourself alive. Through circumstances designed to break you. Now you get to heal. That's what this wealth gives you. Not just money, but time and space and resources to actually recover." The healing came in unexpected ways. The first time Claire bought groceries without checking her bank balance, she had a panic attack in the dairy aisle. The first time she paid for something with a credit card connected to her new accounts, she couldn't breathe for a full minute, certain the transaction would decline. Dr. Kim helped her understand these were normal responses to sudden security after prolonged threat. Her body would catch up to her circumstances eventually, but it needed time. Meanwhile, Claire's family escalated their legal challenges. Helen Brooks filed multiple motions contesting the will, each one claiming a different angle. Patricia had been incompetent. Claire had exerted undue influence. The video testimony had been coerced. The psychiatric evaluations were fraudulent. Leonard Ashford demolished each challenge methodically, presenting evidence so comprehensive that judges barely took time to consider the motions before dismissing them. Marcus filed a separate lawsuit claiming Patricia had promised him money in private conversations, that she'd verbally agreed to split her estate among all relatives. The lawsuit died when Ashford presented recordings Patricia had made of every significant conversation in her final year, none of which contained any such promise. Vanessa tried a different approach, claiming Claire owed her money from years ago and that Patricia's inheritance should be garnished to satisfy those debts. That attempt collapsed when Claire's lawyer presented evidence that Vanessa had actually borrowed from Claire repeatedly and never repaid, creating a situation where Vanessa owed Claire money, not the other way around. Each failed challenge cost Claire's family money they didn't have, legal fees mounting on attorneys' advice that kept promising victory while delivering humiliation. Helen Brooks, whose reputation suffered with each dismissal, eventually recommended they stop fighting. Patricia Fleming's documentation is airtight, she told them bluntly. Every challenge we file gets demolished by evidence you didn't know existed. You're wasting money on a battle you cannot win. But Marcus couldn't let it go. 6 months after Patricia's death, he filed a final motion claiming the entire inheritance violated public policy, that concentrating so much wealth in one person was inherently unfair, that the court should order redistribution on moral grounds. The hearing took place in Mercer County Superior Court on a cold December morning. Claire attended with Ashford, sitting in the gallery while Marcus's new attorney, Helen having finally refused to continue, made arguments that bordered on incoherent. Patricia Fleming's decision to leave everything to one relative while excluding others violates basic principles of family fairness. The court should intervene to correct this injustice. Judge Maria Santos, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, let him finish before responding. Counsel, are you seriously arguing that this court should overturn a legally valid will because you don't like who inherited? That's not how estate law works. People have the right to leave their assets to whoever they choose, for whatever reasons they choose. Family members have no inherent right to inheritance. She turned her attention to the file in front of her. I've reviewed all previous motions in this matter. Every single challenge has been dismissed for lack of merit. Patricia Fleming's mental competency was established beyond any doubt. Her reasoning was documented extensively. Her wishes were crystal clear. Judge Santos looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Morrison, your sister inherited this estate because Patricia Fleming chose her specifically. Not randomly, not by accident. She observed your behavior for decades and concluded you didn't deserve consideration. That judgment appears to have been accurate, given that you've spent 6 months harassing Ms. Morrison through frivolous litigation. Her gavel came down with finality. This motion is denied. Furthermore, I'm sanctioning you and your attorney for filing a claim with no legal basis. You're ordered to pay Ms. Morrison's legal fees related to this hearing. And Mr. Morrison, if you file any additional challenges to this estate, I will hold you in contempt of court. Do you understand? Marcus's face went red, then white. He opened his mouth to respond, but his attorney grabbed his arm and shook his head. They left the courtroom quickly, defeated and financially damaged. Ashford turned to Claire with something approaching satisfaction. That's the final nail. They can't appeal this without risking contempt charges. You're done fighting them. Claire felt relief wash over her so completely she had to sit down. It's really over? Yes, the inheritance is legally and permanently yours. Patricia's wishes have been honored. Your family has no further recourse. That evening, Claire sat with Maya in their living room, fire crackling in the fireplace, the hope chest positioned exactly where it belonged. She told her daughter about the court hearing, about the judge's final ruling, about the fight being finished. Maya, now 8 years old and visibly healthier than she'd been a year ago, looked at her mother with serious dark eyes. Why do they fight so hard? We would have shared if they'd been nice to us. The question revealed Maya's generous heart, her inability to understand cruelty from a position of kindness. Claire pulled her close, tried to explain concepts a child shouldn't need to understand. Some people only care about taking, baby. They don't want to build relationships or earn trust. They just want what they think they're owed. Aunt Patricia understood that about them. That's why she left everything to us instead. Do you think she's happy, Aunt Patricia, that we have the house and we're safe? Claire looked at the hope chest, imagining Patricia selecting stocks in the 1950s, buying shares when everyone said women didn't understand finance, building something magnificent through patience and absolute certainty that someday someone would need exactly what she was creating. Yeah, baby, I think she's very happy. Spring brought new developments. Victoria Chen presented Claire with investment reports showing the portfolio had grown by $14 million since Patricia's death, market gains that happened automatically while Claire wasn't even paying attention. The wealth was building itself, compounding, creating abundance that no amount of spending could deplete. You're generating approximately $600,000 per month in passive income, Victoria explained. That's money you could spend freely without ever touching the principal. But I'd recommend you think carefully about what you want this wealth to accomplish. Claire had been thinking about exactly that since the day she'd found the portfolio. She'd made lists, talked to Maya, consulted with Dr. Kim about processing survivors' guilt, researched what other sudden wealth recipients had done successfully. She scheduled a meeting with Victoria's team and several nonprofit consultants who specialized in foundation development. They gathered in Victoria's conference room on a Tuesday morning, and Claire presented the plan she'd been building for months. I want to establish a foundation focused on supporting single mothers facing the same circumstances I faced. Not handouts, but comprehensive support that addresses root causes. She clicked through the presentation she'd spent weeks developing. Emergency housing that doesn't require credit checks or deposits. Legal aid for custody battles, evictions, employment discrimination. Job training with childcare included. Mental health services. Education funding. Everything I needed and couldn't access. The nonprofit consultants took notes, asked questions, helped refine the concept. They discussed structure, sustainability, measuring impact, scaling responsibly. By the end of the meeting, Claire had committed $50 million to establishing what would become the Patricia Fleming Foundation for Family Stability. $50 million is ambitious for a starting endowment, Victoria warned. Are you certain? Claire thought about sleeping in her car with Maya, about choosing between rent and food, about her family turning away when she asked for help, about Patricia watching from the edges and deciding to do something about it. I'm certain. This is what Patricia would have wanted. She built this fortune for me, but she built it so I could help others. I'm going to honor that. The foundation took shape over the following year. Claire worked with experienced nonprofit directors to establish programs that actually helped rather than just checking boxes. They purchased apartment buildings and converted them to transitional housing where single mothers could stay for up to 2 years while getting stable. They partnered with law schools to provide free legal services. They created job training programs that included childcare and transportation stipends. The applications poured in. Hundreds, then thousands of single mothers in situations Claire recognized intimately. Women working 3 jobs and still unable to afford rent. Women fleeing domestic violence with nowhere to go. Women who'd been abandoned by families that were supposed to help. Claire read applications personally, seeing her own story reflected in different circumstances. She cried over stories of resilience and survival. She got angry at systems that punish poverty while claiming to help. And she wrote checks that changed lives, knowing exactly how much they mattered because she'd been there herself. Maya, now 9 years old and thriving in 4th grade, became the foundation's unofficial mascot. She spoke at fundraising events with a poise that belied her age, telling their story without shame or hesitation. "My mom and I used to sleep in our car," she'd say to rooms full of wealthy donors. "We were homeless because family didn't help and systems didn't work. But we survived because my mom never gave up. And now we help other families survive too." Her honesty moved people. Donations flowed from Princeton's wealthy residents, many of whom had never considered that homelessness existed in their community. The foundation grew beyond what Claire had initially imagined, expanding into additional services, partnering with other organizations, building a network of support that Patricia would have approved of. 2 years after finding the portfolio, Claire's life had transformed so completely that sometimes she had to remind herself it was real. She owned their home outright, no mortgage, no possibility of eviction. Maya attended excellent schools and had friends whose parents never questioned whether playdates were financially possible. Claire had work that mattered, using Patricia's gift to create the support system she desperately needed years ago. But the adjustment wasn't seamless. Claire still experienced panic when she spent money, still caught herself hoarding food she didn't need, still woke up some mornings expecting to find herself back in the Honda Civic with everything good having been a dream. Dr. Kim helped her understand that healing wasn't linear, that trauma lived in the body even when circumstances changed, that she'd need years to fully integrate her new reality. "You're doing remarkable work," Dr. Kim told her during a session. "The foundation is changing lives. But Claire, you need to let yourself enjoy this too. Patricia didn't leave you that fortune just to work yourself to exhaustion helping others. She wanted you to have joy, security, peace, permission to rest." The words landed harder than Claire expected. She'd been so focused on using the wealth responsibly, on honoring Patricia's gift through service, that she hadn't really allowed herself to just live, to enjoy having a beautiful home, financial security, freedom from constant stress. She started small, taking Maya on trips during school breaks. Nothing extravagant, but intentional. A week at the beach, a long weekend in Boston. Simple experiences that would have been impossible a few years ago. She bought herself things without guilt. Books from actual bookstores instead of the library. Clothes that fit properly. A comfortable car to replace the dying Honda. Small luxuries that represented freedom from counting every penny. She hired a housekeeper, initially feeling guilty about having someone clean for her, then realizing it gave her more time with Maya. She joined a gym, taking care of her body in ways she'd never prioritized during survival mode. And slowly, gradually, Claire began to believe this life was real. That security wasn't temporary. That good things could last. The hope chest remained in the living room, a daily reminder of Patricia's faith and careful planning. Claire made it a ritual to touch the carved roses each morning, a small gesture of gratitude for the woman who'd watched from the edges and decided to act. On the 3rd anniversary of Patricia's death, Claire organized a memorial service at the foundation's headquarters. The building occupied a renovated warehouse in Princeton, transformed into offices and meeting spaces and childcare facilities. A plaque near the entrance read, "Patricia Catherine Fleming. 1936 to 2023, she saw what mattered." 200 people attended the memorial, most of them single mothers who'd been helped by the foundation's programs. They shared stories of how housing assistance had saved them from homelessness, how legal aid had protected their children, how job training had given them careers instead of just jobs. Claire stood at the podium with Maya beside her, looking out at faces that proved Patricia's vision had been right. 3 years ago, I was homeless and desperate. My family had abandoned me. Systems had failed me. I was living in my car with my daughter, trying to figure out how to survive another day. Patricia Fleming barely knew me. We'd spoken maybe a dozen times in my entire life. But she'd been watching. She'd seen me fight. She'd seen my family betray me. And she decided I deserved better. She spent 40 years building a fortune with one purpose: to give my daughter and me security. But she also gave us something more important. She gave us proof that someone believed we mattered, that our struggles weren't invisible. That character counted for something. This foundation exists because Patricia saw me, really saw me, not as the family failure everyone else saw, but as someone fighting to survive with dignity intact. She built this gift on faith that I'd use it right. Claire's voice broke, emotions overwhelming carefully prepared words. Maya squeezed her hand, lending strength. Every single mother we help through this foundation is Patricia's legacy. Every child who doesn't have to experience homelessness is proof that her vision was right. Every family that stays together because they receive support at the critical moment is exactly what she hoped for. She looked at Patricia's photograph displayed behind the podium, the same serious expression from family gatherings where she'd stood at the edges and observed. Thank you, Aunt Patricia. Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for believing we deserve this. Thank you for building something so magnificent that it's changing hundreds of lives beyond ours. I hope we're making you proud. The applause was long and heartfelt. People standing to honor a woman most of them had never met, but whose impact had touched them all. After the memorial, Claire and Maya visited Patricia's grave in Princeton Cemetery. The headstone was simple, elegant, just her name and dates with an inscription Claire had chosen. She built what mattered. Maya placed flowers on the grave, then stepped back to hold her mother's hand. They stood in silence for several minutes, the spring afternoon warm and peaceful. Mom? Maya's voice came quiet. Do you think Aunt Patricia knew that would all work out like this? Claire considered the question, thinking about Patricia's meticulous planning, her decades of patient investment, her absolute certainty reflected in every document. Yeah, baby. I think she knew exactly what she was doing. She knew we'd fight to protect what she gave us. She knew we'd use it to help others. She knew her faith in us wasn't misplaced. I'm glad she picked us. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They drove home through Princeton's tree-lined streets, past the university and the boutique shops and the houses where old money whispered from every corner. Their own house sat waiting, warm and permanent and completely theirs. Inside, the hope chest occupied its place near the fireplace, the carved roses catching afternoon light. Claire ran her fingers over the wood, this beautiful piece that had traveled from Ireland in 1891, that had held Patricia's grandmother's wedding dress and hand-tatted linens, that had concealed a fortune built on faith and patience. The chest was just wood and brass now, its hidden compartment empty. But the true treasure had never been the portfolio itself. It had been Patricia's belief that Claire deserved better, that Maya deserved opportunities, that character mattered more than blood, that people who kept fighting when giving up would be easier were worth protecting. Maya settled on the couch with one of her hundreds of books, this child who'd once hoarded school snacks because she didn't trust lunch would be provided. Now she read without fear, learned without anxiety, lived without the constant threat of loss that had defined her early childhood. Claire's phone buzzed with a message from the foundation director. Another 50 applications had come in this week. Could Claire review them when she had time? She could. She would. She'd spend tomorrow reading stories of struggle and survival, identifying families who needed support, writing checks that would change lives the way Patricia's gift had changed hers. But tonight, she was going to sit with her daughter in their permanent home, watch the fire burn in the fireplace, and let herself feel what Patricia had given them. Not just money, though the wealth was real and substantial and would sustain them for generations, but peace, safety, the absolute certainty that they mattered enough for someone to build something magnificent on their behalf. Claire pulled Maya close, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo, and hoped that no longer needed to be guarded against disappointment. I love you, baby, more than anything in this world. Maya hugged her back, small arms fierce with the security of knowing this wouldn't be taken away. I love you too, Mom. We're so lucky. Yeah, we really are. Outside, spring evening settled over Princeton, stars emerging in a sky that seemed impossibly vast after years of viewing it through car windows and parking lots. Tomorrow would bring more work, more families to help, more ways to honor Patricia's gift. But tonight was for gratitude, for acknowledging how far they'd come, for recognizing that sometimes, rarely, impossibly, the world gave you exactly what you needed when you needed it most. Patricia had watched from the edges of family gatherings and seen what others missed, had recognized character under pressure, resilience despite circumstances, the difference between people who gave and people who only took. She'd built her fortune carefully over 4 decades. Every stock purchase a brick in something larger than herself. And when the time came, she'd left it all to a niece she barely knew because she'd seen something worth protecting. Claire Morrison had been homeless 3 years ago, sleeping in a car with her daughter, dismissed by her family as someone who'd made bad choices and deserved the consequences. Tonight, she owned a beautiful home in Princeton, ran a foundation that had helped over 800 families escape poverty, and was raising a daughter who understood that survival could become thriving if someone cared enough to help. The hope chest sat silent and patient, its secret long since revealed, its purpose fulfilled. Just a beautiful antique now, worth $8,000 to collectors who'd never know what it had once contained. But Claire knew, would always know, would touch those carved roses every morning and remember that someone had believed in her when no one else did. That Patricia Fleming had watched her fight and decided she deserved to win. That blood didn't make family, but character did. And that sometimes, just sometimes, when you refused to give up despite every reason to quit, when you kept fighting with dignity intact and hope carefully guarded, someone noticed. Someone cared. Someone built you a miracle and hid it in plain sight, waiting for the moment you needed it most. Claire had found that miracle 3 years ago in the false bottom of an antique hope chest, and she'd used it to build something Patricia would have loved. Not just wealth for herself, but a legacy of helping others survive the battles she'd fought. The fire burned low in the hearth. Maya's breathing evened out as she dozed off, books slipping from her fingers. Claire covered her daughter with a blanket and sat watching her sleep. This brave, beautiful child who'd survived circumstances no child should face. They were safe now, permanently, completely safe. And somewhere, Claire liked to imagine, Patricia Fleming was watching from the edges like she always had, satisfied that her careful planning had worked exactly as she'd hoped, that the hope chest had fulfilled its purpose, that the worthy heir had proven herself worthy indeed. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.